There
Awesome.
we go.
Thank you. All right. So I was inspired at the last quarterly Tug Leaders call by the higher education Tug folks who do some really cool things in their Tug. One of those was just a community spotlight. So picking somebody from our community at each Tug to just uplift, talk a little bit more about themselves, what they do, and then maybe ask them some fun questions as well. So I asked Roshni, who is one of the leaders of the higher education Tug, about exactly how do you do that community spotlight? And then she gave me a bunch of great information. Then I said, well, hey, would you actually want to be our community spotlight for
And I
this
said, sure.
month's Tug? And she said, sure. And then she said, and I'm going off grid for the next 5 days. So see you at the Tug. So it's great to see you here, Roshni. She already introduced herself a little bit. Yeah. But Roshni is an analyst of the portfolio reporting solutions at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and a leader of the higher education Tug. I'm going to open up some of my speaker notes. The way this is going to work is I'm just going to ask Roshni some more in-depth questions about her work, who she is, talk a little bit about her perspective on accessibility in Tableau, and then we'll have some fun kind of lightning round questions.
Can't wait for the lightning round.
Oh yeah, it's coming. I don't know, can you see my speaker notes when I do this, or
Nope.
are you still just seeing? Oh, perfect. Okay. So first off, maybe Roshni, if you could just describe a little bit more about your role and your team at MIT.
Sure. So I work, like I mentioned, I work in our investment management company, and we kind of are split into 3 distinct sections. We have our investment staff, we've got our real estate staff, and then we've got the operations staff who support all of that. And our portfolio reporting solutions is kind of our data team. We support all 3 of those sides. We have the GIS folks who are investments, the people who focus on investment reporting, and helping onboard new tools for investment. We've got the real estate side, and that's the side I work on, where we try to, again, help onboard new tools, get reporting out there, get data out of tools into standalone reporting, into other tools, that sort of thing. And we also have a data assets team that within our portfolio reporting solutions that is basically, deals with a lot of the pipelines, making sure that we're getting the data when we're supposed to get it, that, if a file comes in and, a column name is wrong, or the file name is in all caps instead of the way it was, specified in our feed, that it doesn't break. So there's like three kind of distinct groups of or roles happening in our team. And a lot of, I'm new to Matimco. I've been at MIT for over 14 years, but I'm new to Matimco. So I'm still learning pretty much everything real estate.
Yeah.
But learning the terminology, learning like, oh, this is important to these folks for this reason, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I feel like that leads really naturally into the next question, which is like, what type of data do you work with?
So right now, a lot of what we've been working with is property financials. We are working on, getting property financials in from our accounting system, feeding it to other tools, and I'm in the process of building for the 34th time, building, rebuilding, unbuilding, restructuring the data, a tool that will let us look at all of sort of the high level metrics and on the financial side for each of our properties. And also do some aggregated reporting. One of the fun parts about the way we look at our financials is that we're split between different investment pools, and some of our properties are split between different investment pools. And so in Tableau, we could go the route of adding a whole bunch of LODs to combine a property or the parts of a property. So there's a lot of like things that we could do in Tableau that we could also do in SQL. And so there's a lot of like, okay, where should we do this? Where does it make the most sense to do this? And where can we maybe create some sort of reusable object for other purposes, either Tableau related or for other reporting that might happen outside of Tableau. But yeah, right now, a lot of it is financials. We are in the process of kind of starting a property sort of master data project, which is going to be fun because we have, a gajillion tools that we're putting property data into, that we're getting property data out of. And, it'd be nice to not have to duplicate a whole bunch of data entry and that sort of thing. So we're in the planning stages of that data modeling and hopefully, actually building out something real over the next year or so. There.
Yeah, I love that request by stakeholders. Is like, can't we just have like all the data in like one place?
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah, yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Or can't we just have a dashboard that says everything?
Yeah, I'll take like 20 years to load, but sure.
Okay, so getting into some like accessibility stuff, I'm interested. What's something that you think Tableau does well when it comes to accessibility?
I think so. Okay, I've got two things. One, the default color palette's not going to red, yellow, green as other tools sometimes do, and the actual existence of a colorblind palette, regardless of how effective it is or not. Like the idea that there has been research done to try to come up with something that is supposed to work well for all users, not necessarily just those who are colorblind, is I think that's a huge step forward that a lot of other tools don't do. The second is that it gives you a lot of flexibility. Like you can choose how big does this part of the screen, how big is this part of the screen? So you can make this button clickable and actually clickable or tappable on a phone or with someone who has, motor issues and can't type or can't put their mouse on that tiny like 2 by 2 pixel spot that's supposed to trigger something, right? There's a lot of flexibility that's open there, especially with things like show hide containers. And I know that there's probably all sorts of accessibility issues related to those as well, but I think that's the case for a lot of tools. But I think there's a lot of flexibility, and part of our roles as data visualization designers and or data analysts or whatever your title is, if you're using Tableau for visualizations, part of your role is to understand what the tool can do, but then also understand how you can use the tool to create a better experience for your users, regardless of what their abilities are.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I agree. And just like the ability to do a lot of different like formatting changes, whether
Yeah,
it's color or font size or font in general, like, yeah, I think
size of
I
the button,
definitely
like
size of the
like that,
button. Yeah.
right? That's something that a lot of people don't think about. But like, you're trying to squish this button into this tiny spot. Well, maybe that's not the best idea, right? Like,
Hmm. Right. And I think those show hide buttons are actually pretty good when it comes to accessibility. They're usable, you can focus on them using the tab, you can
yep.
press the space bar to actually activate them. So
You can also add like the tooltips, and
right.
other like alt text basically to make them more readable for a screen reader,
Hmm.
I believe.
Right. Yeah,
I think.
there's definitely a way to add a tooltip to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So then what do you think is like your biggest Tableau accessibility pet peeve?
Um, Again, I think this goes not to Tableau, but to the creator of the visualization. And
Hmm.
sometimes the people who request the visualization, you want to cram a lot of information on the screen. And sometimes in order to do that, you've got to shrink those font sizes down, which often creates a really bad experience for everyone. That default size 8 font, like, no, it should be bigger, even to size 9. I have no idea what the default font size is. All I know is that half the time I'm asked to make it even smaller, and then people are like, I can't read this. I'm like, yes, I know that. You asked for this, so we can make it bigger or we can take things off the dashboard.
Yep.
But yeah, like that, I think the again, you have that flexibility, but it's all in like the designer makes a lot of choices. Every single choice you make has an impact on at least one of your users, right? So yeah, that default font size, I wish they would make it bigger,
Hmm.
just to
Yeah,
encourage people to think a little bit more about like, oh, should you really be making this unreadable for most users?
right. Totally. Or just like, don't make them think, right? Just give them the right choice to
Yeah,
start and then let
yeah,
them make their own wrong decisions.
yeah.
Nice. Okay, I got one more question for you, which is, you know, what do you think, if you could think about like yourself as like a Tableau newbie when you were first coming to use the software, what's one piece of advice you would have given yourself?
So I think I actually got this training in my initial Tableau training, and then got it in a more, in-depth way later on. But there's this visual analytics course. I'm sure there's like documentation, PowerPoints, whatever, that Tableau has put together. That a lot of people have like sort of created other versions of, where they talk about things like pre-attentive attributes and Gestalt principles and all of those types of things, that all these design principles that a lot of us don't think about when we're thinking. A lot of folks come from like, oh, I work with spreadsheets, and oh, I was asked to create a chart, and oh, Tableau creates charts. So you don't a lot of folks don't come into, or at least the people I've worked with haven't come into Tableau from the idea of being a data designer. And so there's a lot that you can learn on the visualization side, on like, design principles and that sort of thing, that can help you become a better data visualization designer. And part of that should always include things like, the accessibility considerations, like colorblindness, and that the mobility, making things big enough for your users to actually be able to get to, and that sort of thing. So don't think just about the charts. Think about some of the design principles behind them, before you start creating charts that
Yeah,
you want people to actually use.
totally. I mean, that's like in our training program, we start right with those Gestalt principles, like, okay, size, color, right? I totally agree that coming at it from that design start is really good.
Yeah. And having that get reinforced throughout your, like don't forget about it, right? Like come
Yeah,
back to it every once in a while and be like, oh, right, that chart I built with like 4 different shades of blue that look almost similar. Maybe it wasn't the best idea.
yeah, yeah, totally. Or like, sometimes it just helps me think about different ways, like angle orientation, right, is
Yep.
one of those Gestalt principles. And it's not one that I think about that much, even though we use it all the time when it's a line chart, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Is there anything else that you'd like to share since you have the spotlight on you, Roshni?
I think this tug is great. I'm really excited to see what you guys do with this. And I know there's a lot of higher ed folks in here. So I am gonna one more time shamelessly plug the higher ed tug. But yeah, if there's, I think the idea of having this tug is just a great idea. So I'm really glad that you guys have started it up, because I think there's a lot that we not just the folks here, but the other folks in the data fam community can get out of thinking about accessibility more, when we're working with Tableau and other tools.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's wonderful to have a couple folks from Tableau here,
Yep.
that can really help give us the understanding of like how the company is thinking about it and the plans that it has going forward.
Totally agree.
Cool. So now it's time for our fun lightning round. And
I'm
Roshni,
excited.
I thought really hard about exactly what to do for this lightning round, because I know you're like the pro of it over there in the higher education tug.
Jenny does almost all of the lightning round. I only come up I come up with ideas that she's like about. So
All right. Well, I was thinking about you work at MIT, which is of course a very well-known acronym, right? When you say MIT, people are typically thinking like, well, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, right? You've got a bunch of nerds up there in Boston doing all sorts of like fancy cutting edge stuff. But I feel like that kind of washes out a lot of other things that have MIT as their acronym. So I thought I might, give a little air to some of those other MITs and do a couple pairings. So what I'm going to show are a series of different MIT acronyms, and I want you to pick one of each pair. All right, that you prefer, that calls out to you more. All right, and if you feel the need to explain why, feel free, but don't feel like you need to.
all right, this is going to be interesting.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Made in Taiwan versus made in Turkey.
I'm going to say made in Turkey for a couple of reasons. So I was a linguistics major, and my thesis was actually on some structures in Turkish that are cool to look at. And I don't know, made in Turkey. That's it.
Great. Men in Trees, which is a TV show, versus Men in Trouble. Or sorry, Men in Trouble.
Is the second one also a TV show?
No, I think it's just an acronym warning.
Oh, interesting. I like the idea of the warning, actually. So Man in Trouble, I guess.
All right, Man in Trouble.
I've never seen the TV show, so.
Next one, Mother in Training versus Manager in Training.
Ooh, Manager in Training.
All right.
I feel like it's sort of a higher level category. Like Mother in Training is a type of Manager in Training.
That's true. All right, Masters of Information Technology versus musical instrument technology.
Ooh, I'm gonna go with musical instrument technology. So before I worked at Mid-Timco, I was in fundraising. Before that, I was in central IT, and before that, I was in the libraries. And one of the cool things about the library, like MIT has 5 libraries, plus a distinctive collections group. And one of the libraries is a music library, and they had some really cool technology in there that students could use for creating, creating music. And we also have sort of a digital music professor who basically teaches code to create music using like Python libraries and things like that. I think he was one of the founders of or worked at the company that created one of those Rockstar games. I can't remember, Guitar Hero or one of those types of games.
Oh, cool.
But I've seen him do a couple of presentations, and like it's really engaging. So I'm going to say musical instrument technology, the very long-winded way of saying music.
Nice. All right. Next one, most important task versus minimally invasive treatment.
Ooh, I like most important task. Prioritization is important, and one of the things, we always have to prioritize things like accessibility with getting the user what they want or what they need. So most important task, prioritization.
All right. The next one's the final one, and these are both groups that exist at NASA. Okay, so use that as context, but they're both MIT acronym groups that exist at NASA.
I wonder how that happened.
We have the Mishap Investigation Team versus the Mission Integration Team.
Ooh, I like Mishap Investigation Team. I mean, all of us have mishaps in Tableau and in life. And sometimes the best solution or the best thing to do after a mishap is to investigate what happened, see how you can improve, learn from your mistakes. And I think that's something that all of us should be doing with our Tableau workbooks. Look at that. I can make things stretch really well.
That was great. That was 100% answer. All right. That's the last one. Thank you, Roshni,
Thanks for having me.
putting up with my questions. And yeah, go to the higher education tug. It's awesome.
Thanks.
All right. So we're going to move on to our next section, which is going to be a little bit more of an introduction to our folks from Tableau that are here today, Mushmi and Blake. So I'm just going to turn it over to the two of you just to talk a little bit about, what you do at Tableau and what you see on the horizon for accessibility.
Great. Mushmi, do you want to go first and just give a quick overview of your history, and then I can go?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Senior Director of Product Management at Tableau Analytics, and I lead the trust work. And trust is very important within Salesforce and Tableau as a whole. Trust is actually our number one value. Trust means for us a few different pillars, and accessibility being one key pillar under trust. So Blake is going to do his own introduction, but like Blake is part of my team, and we've been kind of tag teaming on a lot of the accessibility stuff over the past year or so. I joined Salesforce about a year ago. Blake has been here for, I think, just over 6 months now. So overall, I think, we're looking at, Tableau has been investing in accessibility, but like we're taking it further, and, we're working on driving more investment into the whole kind of accessibility area on the consumption experience, the creator experience, which Blake is going to talk to you and provide some details about in the time we have. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Blake as he's going to be sharing some of the meat of the stuff, which I think will be interesting to many of you. But I'm very excited to kind of be part of this tug today, and hopefully, as we go forward, hoping to be part of the future tugs and, understand more sort of what's working for our users, what's not, and, take feedback to our product development teams and make sure we continue the journey of accessibility forward. So over to you, Blake.
Thanks, Moshmi. So first, just like Moshmi said, I want to thank you all for the tug. I'm so excited to see the passion around accessibility and just Tableau in general. One of the things that made me want to work at Tableau was I've never heard of a product before where people were fans and had t-shirts and, like a software product, like, yeah, Apple and all that. But like, people don't quite get that excited about other data analyst products. And so it was so exciting to me to see a product that had that passion. And that was something I wanted to be a part of. So I'm really honored to be on the team. I have been here 6 months. In that time, there's some exciting things that we've been able to do. The first is that we have been able to create testing on our creator side. We have a third-party audit done. So we've shared this with some of our commercial partners. We are going to be publishing our ACR, our accessibility conformance report on that within the month. So I'm excited for that new milestone to expand our audits and make sure that, we're able to let you understand the accessibility of our products more broadly. As Moshmi, mentioned, we are investing in accessibility. We have a team of engineers now that are dedicated to doing accessibility work, and we are prioritizing the work on the viewer side, which again, I'm super excited to really get into the meat and potatoes of that and think through the 3 pillars, which I think of, it all centers around the customer. And as we put the customer in the middle of a customer-centric triangle, we have design, engineering, and product. And so, with those 3 pillars working together, making sure that, we're thinking about our problems, or I like to call them our opportunities, in a way that is as customer-centric as possible, that, we release things only when they actually have benefits to our customers and can move things forward for everyone. We have some super exciting stuff that is under development. In fact, code complete today, knock on wood, that I've been testing. I'm not allowed to share that yet, but I cannot wait for our next tug so that I can do a demo and share it, because
What a tease.
Well, it teases up our participation for next time, I guess. But
Yep.
one of the first things I did when I came to Tableau is I spent my first month doing nothing but reading the questions in the forums, reading the questions on LinkedIn where people had feedback, reading Twitter. I really wanted to understand, to me, the most important thing that I feel like I bring to Tableau is a customer perspective. I'm a new person. I am not an expert at it. And so learning Tableau and learning about the customer journey was really important to me. While I have an expertise in accessibility, I like to bring that beginner's mindset and make sure that I represent customers. And so I am so honored to be a part of this tug and listen and hear your feedback, and then make sure to bring that right back to those 3 pillars where, I look at us as sort of surrounding you with support so that we can make sure to build the most accessible experience on the planet.
All right. That's a great goal to strive for.
Yeah, and I think, I would just like to add to whatever Blake has said. So we're working on building accessibility more and more as part of our SDLC, or software development life cycle. So calling it like shifting left, which means we shouldn't be looking at accessibility as a separate feature. So every feature that Tableau releases in the future, we'll have kind of an accessibility gate to get through before the feature is released. So we don't have to kind of worry about accessibility problems afterwards and say, oh, well, we are developing separately for accessibility. No, that should not be. And every feature by inherently should have accessibility built in. And that's why kind of, it's important to make it as part of that SDLC process. And that's what we are moving towards, and that's our goal. So yeah, I think right now, a lot of the existing features or the ones that we are working on right now have that. It's some of the, I think, the previous features or some of the other accessibility debt we had around. I mean, those are getting also prioritized through the roadmap. But going forward, most new features will have that part, accessibility gate built in.
I think as you know, that's a perfect reminder, Moshmi, for anyone who is a leader of accessibility from a program side. You often have two sets of work. One is the accessibility debt. I like to call it. I like to think of it as bad debt, just like you owe a bank money, right? Like we owe our customers the accessibility. So you have your accessibility debt, and then you have your debt prevention, right? And so my goal is to stop moving things into the debt bucket and make sure that we're driving work at the same time, both on improving your current experience and making sure that future experiences are launching with as accessibly as with it, as many accessible features as possible. Data visualizations can be quite challenging to make accessible, but that's not a reason not to attempt to do it. And so I'm excited to make sure that we're pulling in research, talking to customers, and really centering things around how our customers and their customers use Tableau and what their needs are, so that we can when we talk about building it into the SDLC, it's a process that makes sense from the customer perspective, and not just a box that we're ticking off and going, oh, well, we mentioned accessibility and that's enough for today and we can keep going. So I'm excited to see us really look at ways to raise the bar on accessibility and insist on a standard that customers can see in the future.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement that I can see in the chat around what you two are saying. I think that for many of us, this is stuff that we've been wanting to hear from Tableau for years in some cases. And it's really exciting to hear it from you both. I guess my question as a follow-up is, as some of the people in the data fam that are most interested in seeing this pushed forward, what can we be doing that would be most helpful for you all?
I mean, I think that's a fantastic question. I think some of the things that you all already do and should continue doing is being really vocal about what works and what doesn't work. I really appreciated Emily shared some thoughts on LinkedIn, and that was really helpful for me as a new person to look at that and get their perspective. I've seen a couple people that aren't here on the call where they've highlighted, hey, I would have loved to see this be in the release notes. That's a really good feedback, and feedback is constructive and helpful. And to me, that's the number one thing that you can do. I love watching you all engage with the community, whether it's through questions, blogs, or through your own, day jobs where you're leading and insisting on high standards and accessibility.
I think, I would also add to that, saying that we'll encourage all of you to also, when you are posting through the forum, put in your ideas, because we do go look at the forum ideas, and when we are considering sort of our product backlog and prioritization, we look at those ideas coming in through the community, and those do make it as part of our roadmap, right? So I will encourage you to kind of put in your ideas as much as you can. I mean, some of this will be through the TUG interactions, but the community is also a very kind of key place where for end users to get their ideas into the backlog.
Cool.
Oh my gosh, this has been so great. And Colin, you stole the words right out of my mouth, because I think this is really what we have been craving from Tableau for years. Just getting some points of getting more than just just a one-on-one conversation, but really understanding, how is Tableau progressing? What are you doing? And it's not just like, oh, what are you doing? It's more like, what are we doing so that we can build accessible visualizations, or we can have chat around or help others create those accessible visualizations. And I just want to, plus one, Red Hat, we always love to plus one things. I want to plus one what Colin said. And just thank you so much for, I know it was short notice. I am so thankful that you all were able to carve out some time in your schedule today to join us. And I know and it sounds like Brittany and others are looking forward to hearing from you and continuing the conversation in the next year when maybe Blake can share more about what's coming, which I'm so excited. I can't wait to see, like, you've got me all excited. I'm like, I can't wait to see what's gonna happen. My voice went up an octave, so you know I'm really excited.
I did think of one last thing. As I mentioned several times, customer conversations are super important. So please make sure that you're reaching out. Like if you have success managers or account executives, reaching out to them. I will say I have at least 2 customer conversations a day. So it's something I prioritize. It's not something that I would say I don't have time for. That's my top priority. So keep us busy. I want to hear what you have to say. Emily and Colin, I believe, both have my email address. If there's something you really want to escalate through the tug and make sure we talk about, make sure to engage them so that we can make sure that in the future, it may not be something we can talk about yet, but I can keep that on the list. I know that I plan on being at all the tugs from now on, now that I new person know it's a thing, and I'm so excited to be here and create relationships with all of you.
Thank you so much. And I also, just by the way, appreciate the transparency of like, look, I will tell you what I can, but there are going to be some things I can't tell you. Just even that helps us understand that things may be in motion that you just can't disclose at this point. And I think that that's really great because I think in the past, it's just been not a lot of communication. So it's hard to understand what is being done on the accessibility front. So again, I just want to just thank you for sharing that, for being transparent as possible. So anyway, that's my gratitude for you all. And thank you again for popping on as surprise guests to talk with us today.
Thank you, Emily and Colin. I mean, even if it's last minute, I think, going forward, we want to make this a cadence. And we would rather, I mean, Blake and I think we would err more on the kind of over communication side at this point of time. There's again, lots of initiatives going on in the background, and we're also engaging with Salesforce, our parent company, in a larger way from an accessibility perspective as well, and getting a lot of guidance and so on. So that also impacts some of the communication we can or cannot make, The other thing is, perhaps most folks here are users of our community. We are working on giving our community, the accessibility part of the community, a facelift. So, we're working through kind of reprioritizing content over there and, updating. So again, continue to watch out that space and engage more heavily there. As I mentioned before, our audits, I think we briefly talked about it. We have quarterly audits, accessibility audits done by a third-party company. We're publishing all the ACRs quarterly on that community. So if your customers are looking for that information, feel free to take from there. And then obviously the audit findings, again, are making their way through the roadmap process and, the usual prioritization. So again, thank you for having us here today. I think, again, we hope to, again, engage in a meaningful manner in the future in these talk sessions.
Absolutely. Great. Okay. Well, that was wonderful. I'm jazzed, and I'm going to share my screen again so we can keep on plugging. We may have to move fairly quickly through these next couple bits so that we can leave time for Chris at the end, who I see has now joined us. Hi, Chris. Share that. And I want to have this up. Great. Okay, can you see my slides again, Emily? Give me a check.
It says, thanks, Roshni.
Perfect. So the next thing that we were going to talk about, and Emily, if you want to leave this for another time based on our timing, let me know. Otherwise, we do have a section just talking about how do you test for keyboard navigation in Tableau.
So I'll actually, how about well, if somebody put it in the chat, like, let's hear from you in the chat. I can just do, instead of going through a 7-slide deck that I have, I can put that in the chat, which I was going to do anyway, but then just do a super quick demo. So we can do it that way, or we can save it. So put demo or save in the chat so that you all tell me what to do. Demo, demo, demo. All right.
All right.
Okay. So
I'll stop my share.
perfect. All right. So I'm going to share my screen and I put the link in the chat for my little slide deck that I have. But now let me bring up my, let me pause that for a second because that is the wrong Google. That's the wrong Google instance there, Chrome instance. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. There we go. All right. So here we are. All right. So I was on Chartability for a second. And I can put that link in the chat as well. It's a super great reference. So if you haven't checked it out, totally do that. I want to show you, so how to test for accessibility. In the deck, I've got a couple of things about the heuristics in Chartability relative to keyboard nav. So it'll make a little more sense if you were to look at those heuristics while I do some of this demo. This is a data visualization that I did a bajillion years ago or last year, one of the two. Super simple. So I thought, I loved this color palette. I wasn't thinking accessibility because I'm like, this is super simple. What could go wrong? And Frank Alvasky decided that this was going to be one that he did a robust audit on. And oh my, so many things wrong. So I'm going to use it to test keyboard navigation. And I'm also going to show you why color matters in this particular case. So and this is how Frank taught me how to do keyboard nav. So if there's another way to do it, like drop it in the chat, share it out on LinkedIn. But this is how I know how to do it. So I click on the top. I start by clicking in the top left, where maybe my name is. And then once I hit the tab button, now you see that there's a border around my name. And if I tab, it's going to go to each interactive element on the screen. So watch where I'm at. Nominate the viz for viz of the day. I mean, obviously.
Great idea.
But now look where I am. Well, okay, first of all, this color palette with that focus border is really hard. Like when I was checking this again, I was like, oh, where did it go? It actually went down to, oh, crud, but really, are they unreliable in what they post? I think I reset it by mistake. So let me just tab real quick. So yeah, so now I'm down here in this, but really, are they unreliable? If I tab again, I go up to that circle plot thing, and then I go up again. Well, that's not how I would interact with or engage with the viz. And then I go down here to how biased are these sites. Oh, this keeps getting worse. And then I go to that lovely pie chart, which I didn't think was an issue, but it is. And then it goes down to Tableau icon and interactive element. And then it tabs over to all of the, again, this is a web page, so all of the interactive elements. I'm going now to cookie preferences, and now I'm back at the address bar. So we can see that I showed you how to do keyboard nav and why sometimes the colors that you use, you have to really pay attention and think about how would a user who's really who needs to focus and see that focus order border, why that's important, like how color can either hinder or help your keyboard navigation. That is super quick. I have like other examples too, that if we have time, I'm happy to go over them, but that's what I wanted to share, because keyboard navigation is actually, it's important, like it's part of the heuristics, but if you think about like, but why? It's for several reasons. So that's what I have for you in the couple of minutes. If you have any questions, don't ask them now, but ask them in the chat or connect with me later. I'm happy to share whatever knowledge I have on it. So that's what I've got. Colin, awesome. I did that super quick.
That was so quick. I'm very impressed. I feel like we could maybe do like a slide every time we have a tug or something and go further. Yeah. Wow. Brittany commenting like that she's been using Tableau for 3 years and has never seen the keyboard nav stuff. So super helpful.
Yeah. Oh, and Chris put in the, thank you, Chris, because I was going so fast. I didn't even do like a full thing, but make sure you can do everything with a keyboard that you can do with a mouse, because it's about having that similar experience, right? Mm-hmm. So thank you, Chris, for that call out, because that was really important.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
My kind of work, this little next section flows kind of from that. So I decided that one of the most exciting things that was coming out of the product was this dynamic zone visibility, but also when it came to accessibility, like, okay, how is that going to play or not play with accessibility? So I'm going to share my screen. And again, just doing a little quick overview of some of the findings I found, or some of the things that I was thinking about when it came to this dynamic zone visibility. So for those of you who may not be aware, I'm sure a lot of people are living on versions of Tableau that are far earlier than 22.3, which is when this came out. Dynamic zone visibility lets you show or hide particular parts of your dashboard zones. They can be individual objects. They can also be containers based on the value of a field or a parameter. So on my screen right now, there is a GIF or GIF, I never know how to pronounce it, showing an example of this dynamic zone visibility. So you'll note that when the cursor clicks on a particular bar in a bar chart, so say furniture, another chart pops up showing the subcategories within that category. When they unclick it, then that chart disappears. Now, this is probably also something that could be done with a filter action that was appropriately, configured, but this dynamic zone visibility is going to be way more flexible and have a lot of interesting things that people are doing with it. Now, some of the problems that I see here are similar to problems that exist for all actions. So the way this is working is that somebody's clicking on that bar, it's changing the value of a parameter to furniture, it's changing the value of a parameter from false to true. And when that parameter is true, this chart shows. And when the parameter is false, the chart doesn't show. Now, the only way on this dashboard that you can change that parameter from false to true in order to show the subcategories is by clicking on a mark in the view. And one of the big, I asked Roshni earlier, what's your pet peeve about accessibility in Tableau? I think one of my biggest ones is mark selection. We really don't have a good way, and Mushmi, Blake, please correct me if I'm wrong, but to select a particular mark within a view. And so actions that are driven on mark selection, so whether that be a filter action, a parameter action, whatever, are not really available for keyboard-only users. So that then rolls kind of into this issue with dynamic zone visibility. So we're hiding content in many cases behind mark selection. So you need to click on a mark in order to show content on the viz. When I was testing this also with a screen reader, I didn't hear any particular descriptions of zones that were not being shown, or anything along the lines of, you know, hey, click on this to show something, or anything along those lines. And then just from a neurodiversity standpoint, I think that this could potentially introduce some more cognitive overload with more charts and chart types on a single dashboard. In some ways, it might actually help, right? I was talking to Kelly Nesenblatt just before this call, and she was saying like, oh, I'm really excited about dynamic zone visibility because I've got all these charts, but I don't want to see them all at the same time. It's overwhelming to see them all at the same time. So in some ways, we can use this dynamic zone visibility to cull down a bit what we're showing initially on a viz, and only show the specific information or charts that people want to see. So with all things, it can go either way, right? Some things about this are good when it comes to accessibility, other things are not so good. One easy fix here, at least for the problem of mark selection, is just to provide some sort of option like a dashboard parameter control, like a drop-down menu or radio button, when a parameter action is used. So I want to show you an example of this. I'm going to go to my Tableau public. I just published this right before the tug. Oh, I thought I did. Maybe it's hidden. I should be able to see my hidden vizzes here, but it's not showing them to me. That's weird. Well, I've got it up here too. I am not sure I'm sharing my whole screen though, so let me share my whole screen. So this is what I mean. Right now, this is using that dynamic zone value to show the subcategory sales. And the problem is if I was just using keyboard navigation, I wouldn't be able to select this mark to activate the parameter. However, if I add that parameter control onto the dashboard, then I can use that using the keyboard. So for instance, I'm just using space and the arrow buttons to adjust this. So just a little change or thinking about how you might need to add those controls to the dashboard can make a huge difference in the accessibility of your dashboard when it comes to this dynamic zone visibility. There's a lot here that we could go into, but in order to leave some time for Chris to talk, I'm going to leave it there. And just like Emily said, if you have questions about this, drop it in the chat or reach out to me. I'll also have a feedback form at the end of this tug today. You could drop questions in there and we'll get back to you. Okay.
Colin?
Yep.
So Colin, I'm actually going to have a conversational chat with Chris about his accessibility journey.
Great.
So let's welcome Chris to the virtual stage. And Colin, stop sharing your screen.
Oh, but I have this nice slide that says an accessibility journey, DeMartini.
Oh, you know what? I'm still seeing the Tableau workbook. Maybe that's just me. There we go.
There we go.
Yes, an accessibility journey.
No, I'll stop my share. Hello.
All right. Chris, thank you so much. I know you are super busy, so I appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey with us. And it was funny because like right before this, I was like, Chris, did you know that your blog was featured in Actuarial News?
Nope,
it was random.
no idea.
He had no idea.
Nope.
But that was fun. Like they took an excerpt, they showed his coin flip game image in there. And it's like, look at Chris impacting more than the Tableau community. So Chris, I've known you for years, but can you share just a little bit about your Tableau journey so that others get to know you as well?
Sure. So I've been using Tableau for pretty big number of years now. I think my first version was in the 7s, like the late 7s, early 8s of Tableau versions. I actually started with Tableau through Tableau Public though. So I didn't have I wasn't allowed to use my license at work for anything, and didn't really have a way to do data visualizations at home when I got the bug to start working on data visualizations, and Tableau Public was there for me to download and play with and like learn a lot from. So I always, throughout my time in the Tableau world, have felt like I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Tableau Public, and that has kind of helped shape the way that I've gotten involved with the community, and what I've tried to do throughout my career to give back. And I kind of like chop my Tableau quote unquote career up into like 3 main areas of focus. So I started off with just trying to do super complicated stuff, honestly, that I thought we should be able to do. That was hard to do, and so I was trying to figure out how to do things like that. A good example of that is I built my family tree using data that my mom had spent years and years and years collecting, dating back to like the 1600s. She traced our family back, and so she showed me her family tree printout one day, and it was 23 pages of paper taped together on the floor. And so I was like, I can do better for you, Mom. Let me go do that for you. So that got me into looking at things like hierarchical trees and things like that, which historically have been very hard to do in Tableau. So that was kind of the first phase, was trying to figure out how to do all that stuff. And the second thing I started to get into was looking at extensions and like what we can do. How can we make all that complicated stuff that was way too hard to do easier for anybody who's using Tableau, whether it's their first day or their 100th day or their thousandth day of using Tableau. And so I spent a lot of time learning JavaScript and other things like that, and D3 and other tools, to see if there's ways for us to bring that functionality to people using Tableau. My friend and I, Tomasz and I, published blogs using extensions in Tableau before there was an extensions API. So that's always a fun fact that I like to bring up. And then most recently, I've been kind of switched focused into the accessibility area. A lot of that honestly stems from some of the work I do during the day, which I don't really talk too much about in the Tableau world because I have to keep those two things separate. But having a focus on making sure that anybody can use and interact with your visualization and learn from it, or understand what you're trying to say with it, is something that maybe I wasn't always thinking about throughout my historical career, and I've kind of come to realize that that was a mistake, and I need to start thinking about that stuff at the very least going forward, right? And so I published a series of blogs around all the mistakes I've made, basically, in hopes that people would see that it's okay for us to make these mistakes. It's more about if we do realize we've been making mistakes, how do we start taking steps to correct it? It's not something we have to like fix overnight. It's something we need to be on this path towards trying to do better. Because if you try to fix it overnight, it's hard to do. It's almost like a losing battle to try and do it all at once.
Yeah. So where does that motivation come from to make the jump plot, which you were, in my mind, famous for? How did you make the jump from, oh yeah, everybody should be able to, use a visualization and have that data experience, to, wait, I should really blog about, like, I should actually do something about it? Like, what drove you to actually write and really investigate it more and do more work on it than just like, yeah, everybody should?
So I would say a couple things. One thing for sure that stood out to me was there wasn't a ton of content in this area when I went about even starting to think about writing about this subject, specifically in the Tableau world, right? There's the accessibility FAQ. There's maybe like one session at conference once in a while about this. That might be underselling it, but there's not a ton of it compared to other stuff, right? Also, if you like historically look at events related to accessibility, they may not be as well attended as like, look at all the crazy stuff I can do in Tableau and that sort of thing, right? So I thought, there's kind of a gap there. And one of the things I've tried to do throughout my time in the Tableau world is to, if I find a gap like that, try to see if there's something I can do to help fix it or fill it or whatever you would say there. So those are probably some of the key drivers for that. And then also throughout my career, like all the writing, and not that I do that much of it, but all the writing and blogging that I've done is also selfish in the fact that I learn a lot while I'm doing it. And so it was a way for me to like push myself into these areas. If I was going to put words on a page that anybody can read, I kind of make sure that I'm making them as correct as possible. And that doesn't mean that I don't have mistakes out there. I'm sure there's plenty of them, but it kind of forced me to learn more about these subjects in these areas and what may be required and look things up in WCAG and stuff like that. So.
Cool, thank you for that. So, and I'll include the link to Chris's blog in part 1, and so then you can follow on to part 2. I'll provide that in the chat, but when you were blogging about your accessibility journey, you picked your coin flip viz, and I think I've got that somewhere. So while you start talking about it, I can flash it up on the screen, but I'm curious to know why you picked that one to highlight. Oh,
thank you.
Colin already got it in the chat for us.
Colin on the spot. I picked that one because I have some pretty complicated visualizations on my page, and I felt like if I just jumped right into the super complicated one, I would have a lot of trouble getting those first steps under me of like, what do I need to think about and do with this? So I started with the coin flip viz because if you really look at the crux of it, it's some line charts, a couple bar charts, and this like whisker plot thing. And so there's a couple things that I was interested in about that. Obviously, like the bar charts should be the easiest thing for us to convey information about. It's as similar as the labels that are there. Line charts are a little bit more complicated because you have a number of points on that line that you might need to communicate about. Also with lines, you have the, are they intersecting? Are they far apart from each other? Things like that. And then I saw the whisker plot as, a very small step into how do we convey something that has a high volume of data in it. And it's not like this thing has that much data in it, but it is kind of like a unit chart of every single coin flip we did, which is in the hundreds of data points. And so those things together, and the fact that I only used 2 colors, were some of the drivers as to why I thought it could be a good example to start from.
Thank you for that. And yeah, you have done some pretty complex visualizations. And so it was really, I will say that from my perspective, I thought it was really interesting that you did, because it's not just like for me, when I showed my disinformation ad tech viz, there wasn't much like hackiness with that one.
Right.
It was circles and a pie chart.
Right.
So I think I like how you approached accessibility from also this innovative or exotic type of dashboarding to give people range of experience. Okay, let me get back to my questions again, because I'm curious to know how has the oh wait, I know what it is. How has your work and blogging about it, learning more about accessibility, how has that changed the way that you do your work?
It's changed it pretty significantly. And like the very bare minimum of that is the fact that I'm now thinking about all these things anytime I put something in the public forum. It could be as simple as when you're posting a picture on Twitter or Mastodon now, or wherever people go, whatever social media site you pick. Like I never used to alt tag my images until I went through this exercise, and now I would be really disappointed in myself if I put something out there that wasn't had some type of alt text associated with it. And so I just am a little bit more methodical and careful about what I'm putting out there. I'm sure from time to time I'll slip up and miss doing something, and if somebody sees that I did that, call me out on it, and I'll try to remediate that. But yeah, I think probably the bare bones main thing I do is everything that's going out now, I'm at least trying to think about those things and do the best I can with those things. I definitely still post content sometimes that I know isn't great in this area. I kind of have this battle of, do I get it all the way there and perfect, or is it okay for me to post something to public that I know isn't going to be fully accessible for everybody? And I struggle with that like every time I go to publish something. And so there's one project we were talking about, dynamic zones, earlier, and I had this, like, I don't know if it's crazy or not, but I had this idea that you could take like a very complex visualization and overlay annotations on top of it or something like that. And if those annotations were screen reader accessible, it could kind of walk your screen reader user through the complicated visualization and what you're trying to say with it to them potentially. That's one thing I've been thinking about doing. I haven't really got it fully thought out or published. So I have like this work in progress Frankenstein thing on my page that is probably horrific if you try to use it right now. So that's one that, like, I'm uncomfortable that that's out there right now, but I got to start somewhere and stepstone to where I ultimately want to get to.
I think that raises a really good point, because I remember having this this conversation with somebody. I'm not even sure if we've had it before, but it was like, there's how do I do one, make it accessible for one person and then it's not accessible for another, and how do I do it? Was almost analysis paralysis on accessibility, because I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't, it was like this conflict. Like, well, I could make it so that it helps one group of people, but then what about this other group of people? And I really struggled with it. The way that I've approached it is, well, I always talk about just do the best you can.
Right.
Like, we're human and we're learning. The space is, I feel like the space is evolving. And then I don't think that there is like a perfectly accessible visualization, because everybody has different needs. And so I give myself a little grace. You probably don't need that grace, Chris.
No, I definitely do. Everybody needs that grace.
But like, yes, this is a work in progress for you, but it comes down to knowing your audience and what's the intention behind it. I don't know, maybe those are just things I tell myself to make me feel better, but I think it's really important when it comes to accessibility, because you have to learn and iterate and then just do the best you can. I don't know, like, it seems so simple, but it's hard. Like, the space can be hard because you have these struggles. So thank you for acknowledging that you struggle with this, and you are in an uncomfortable position sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
That's really helpful for folks.
And I think just to like +1, there you go. Your comment. If a lot of people are trying their best to do good work in this space, I think as a whole will lift up what we're doing quite a bit. And I think that's what happened, early on in my Tableau career. There was a lot of that going on with people building off of each other's work. So you don't have to feel like you're carrying the torch all the way yourself, kind of thing, right? And that's where the community can come in and be really powerful for those sorts of things if we're able to get that support.
Oh yeah, Colin says, I like the idea that accessibility is a scale, not a state. Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, Chris, what do you wish others would take away from your own experience that you've blogged or shared about?
I mean, it probably go back to what we were just talking about. Like it's not something you're going to fix overnight. Even using tools and challenge to do something, and just try to learn as much as you can about the space to put content out there that, you know, more people can use at the end of the day. You don't want to be excluding somebody from the ability to use the information that you're putting out there. And so even small steps in this process can make a big difference.
Thank you for that. Now, I don't know if it was me and my internet, but you went glitchy a little bit and then kind of, we're still talking, but I didn't catch all of it. So
It's probably my internet, to
okay.
be honest. Yeah.
Okay. So if you have some time after, or if you just want to like super quick kind of go through, because I'm not sure if the recording will pick up what you just shared.
Mm-hmm.
You can opt whatever works best to, oh, Brittany said I missed it as well. You can put it in the chat or just state it.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to just try and repeat it again?
Yeah.
As long as you can edit out the glitchy part, I'm all for that. It kind of reminds me of when I was presenting at conference in front of 1,000 people and my computer crashed, and we had to figure out what to do. And that was quite an experience. So what I was saying though is, you know, to summarize it, is basically like even very, very small steps that you can take in this area can make a big difference to somebody who's trying to look at your visualization. There's going to be things that are easier to do based on what's available in the tool, if we're specifically talking about Tableau right now. And there's going to be things that are a lot harder to do. And hopefully some of the work that I did helps showcase where those easy and hard parts might be. And the more people who are trying to do the hard parts and giving feedback, as we were talking about earlier, back to Tableau about why is this so hard, or, you know, have we thought about this, or when dynamic zones gets pushed out, is there accessibility guidance of how to use it? Those things can all really help move the needle in terms of working our way up that, as Colin put it, scale of going from little to no accessibility to more to more to more. So I said probably something that was completely different than before, but same idea, I think, at the end of the day.
Well, great. And hopefully I'm capturing these correctly. If not, you can always clarify them in the chat. Okay. Okay, so what next is for you on your accessibility journey? Are you going to make over any of your old vises? I know you just talked about this one that you have in progress. What's next for you?
It's a great question. I got to a point with it where I was getting to things that were pretty hard to do with the current version of Tableau, and I kind of paused at that point, to be honest. So hearing that and then there's also a situation where like I published something and then like literally a month later Tableau released something that made it stale, right? And so all of that led to me kind of taking a pause and a step back and just kind of seeing how things went for a period of time. I think honestly, if I do anything else in the space, the next thing I'm looking at is kind of what I was describing earlier, which is there a way to provide a like more high level summary annotation type view of something that maybe is very complex? If you were to like go through the keyboard navigation of everything on the page, there's just so much stuff there that even if it was fully accessible, it still would be a bad experience, right? Like there's a really good talk that a few people did at Outlier. I feel like it was 2 years ago. And one of the things that I'll never forget is they did a demo of like a voting visualization of where the votes landed, and they literally like were navving through each mark, and they did such a good job of like painfully navving through every single mark. and it took them like, I think they went on for like 2-3 minutes. You're just like watching them nav and nav and nav. By the time they get to like the 50th one, you have no idea what happened in the first 10, right? And so, you know, trying to figure out if there's ways we can think about sharing that information to somebody so that they don't have to try to nav through 150 marks and remember them all, sort of thing. So I don't know if I'll make any progress on it. If I can get something that's halfway there, I'll probably be happy enough with that to publish it. But I definitely have quite a ways to go in that thought.
Well, thank you, Chris. I mean, I could talk to you all day, but I also want to respect your time. Chris is on the West Coast of the US, so he still has to get back to work. Again, I just really want to share my thanks for you coming on and sharing your journey, for being so open about it, because I think, you know, it can be tough to say, oh, 0 out of 58 vises, which is in your blog, 0 out of 58 vises do not provide equal access. Oof, like that's, you know, that's like putting your own self on blast, and that can be challenging. I don't know if the hip kids say blast anymore, but I do. So I want to thank you for sharing with us, you know, your experience. And I know that whatever you do next, whether it's on accessibility or something else related to data viz or Tableau, it will be super helpful for us in the community. So I want to extend my thanks. You're always somebody who I love to hear from, just because of your approach to things. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. And likewise, of course.
All right, Chris, now you can get back to work. Colin, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you, Chris, plus oneing everything that Emily said. I'm dropping something in the chat right now. It's 2 links. One is a feedback form on our TUG. So just a chance to reflect on today's session, what you got out of it, what things you would have changed, that sort of thing. Would love if you filled that out. And the second link is a presenter interest form. So I think it's probably best, as you all saw today, to have a variety of voices in this TUG. And we all have a little bit of the, you know, puzzle pieces for this thing of accessibility in Tableau. So I would love, yeah, they're
Colin,
limited.
I was gonna say.
Oh, I screwed them up. Give me just a second. Just give me 1 second. I'll fix it all.
While you're fixing it, Colin, I will, I'll just, you know, like plant some seeds. A couple of the things that we've been thinking about, Colin and I, and something that I've heard a lot, and something that I struggle with. So I'm kind of selfish with this. Hopefully you all don't mind my selfishness. I would love to have screen reader training, because that's the one thing that I've tried to do. And I just feel like, oh, I don't know. Am I doing it right? And then I'm on a Mac, and I was told, oh, VoiceOver, you know, it's a whole Apple experience. It's a better screen reader experience. It helps you out. You really need to test on JAWS. And I'm like, oh gosh, how am I going to do this? So, you know, would you all be interested if we had somebody share about maybe not a quick tip like I did on Keyboard Nav today, but have a short session on how to test for screen readers? If you would, let us know. Put that in the form when Colin opens up access to it. We really want to know what kind of content you're interested in, because this is the way that we can help, as Chris said, like kind of lift up the community and the quality of accessible products that are out there. So, okay.
I
Colin's
just tried.
got...
Give it a shot.
Okay.
That's the presenter form. Is that working now? Or is it just letting you edit my form?
No,
I swear I'm usually better at this.
Oh,
Damn.
Colin.
I think this is something where my company changed how we're able to use forms, because I've done the exact same things I've always done. You know what? Forget it. And I will send out follow-up email once I get it
Cool.
working.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
really want to know what kind of content. So when Cullen sends that email out, give us all the feedback.
Mhm.
You can even say that my jokes are bad. I don't care.
All right. Well, those didn't work, but thank you everybody for your time. Remember, we've got the hashtag AllyTug A11YTUG that you can use to talk about accessibility in Tableau. And then we do this quarterly. So plan is to have the next one in March, and we'll be in touch about exactly what date as Emily and I work that out in the new year.
Oh, thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thanks all.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.